Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today, let's just say it's a topic that's on everyone's mind.
Definitely.
The shocking decline of Manchester United.
Yeah, it's been
Wow.
pretty rough.
And to really get into it, we're going to be looking at some articles from goal.com, on BBC Sport, and ESPN.
Sounds good.
And you guys are not going to believe this. One of the articles mentioned that Manchester United had its worst December in terms of losses since the 1920s.
Wow.
Can you believe that?
That's that's going way back.
I know. Back then, they were dealing with like the aftermath of World War I and all sorts of financial troubles.
It's kind of eerie how history seems to be repeating itself, isn't it?
It really is.
Like, it's fascinating to see how quickly things have unraveled for them.
Yeah.
I mean, remember just a few months ago, there was so much optimism with the new manager coming in.
Amorim.
Yeah.
Everyone was so excited.
And now everyone's whispering the dreaded R word.
Relegation.
For Manchester United. It's almost unthinkable.
I know. It's just hard to even process.
Yeah.
So let's rewind a bit to that Newcastle game.
Oh, boy.
Which honestly seems like it was the tipping point for a lot of fans.
It was pretty brutal.
The articles describe like this scene of just utter frustration at Old Trafford, like fans cheering when a struggling player was subbed off and boos echoing at halftime.
Yeah, it sounds like a complete meltdown.
It does.
I mean, it was dismantling, no two ways about it.
Yeah.
Newcastle took control from the very beginning.
Oh, yeah. Isak scoring that header just 4 minutes in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And get this, Man U didn't manage a single shot on target in the first half hour.
Wow.
You just don't see that from a club of their stature.
No, you don't. It really makes you wonder, is this just a rough patch or is this like a symptom of something much deeper?
That's a question, isn't it?
Because, I mean, they're on a 4-game losing streak with 6 losses in their last 8 games.
Right, this isn't just a blip on the radar.
This is a full-blown crisis.
Yeah, and to really understand how serious this is, let's look at some other clubs that have faced a similar situation.
Okay, yeah.
Leeds United, for example, relegated a couple of seasons ago, despite their history.
They were a powerhouse back in the 70s.
Exactly. Even won the league title.
Yeah.
But then a series of bad decisions, financial instability, and, that disconnect between the team and the fans.
Yeah.
It all just snowballed into their demise.
Okay, so Leeds is like a cautionary tale. But didn't they also have like major ownership issues that Man U doesn't? Is that a fair comparison?
That's a great point, and you're right to point out the differences.
Yeah.
Leeds' situation was definitely made worse by all those internal conflicts and ownership struggles, which thankfully Manchester United isn't facing right now.
Right.
But I think the core issue, that sense of complacency, that feeling of entitlement that comes with past glories.
Yeah.
That's something that definitely resonates with Man U's current predicament.
That's a really interesting point. It's like they've been coasting on their reputation while the rest of the league has become this super competitive, almost cutthroat environment.
Precisely. And the Premier League is unforgiving.
Yeah.
You can't just rest on your laurels. You need a clear vision, smart investments, and a team that's hungry to win week in, week out.
And they're just not.
No. And it's showing in their league position.
14th in the table.
7 points above the relegation zone.
I mean, for a club like Manchester United, that's
unheard of.
Yeah.
And it's got even Amorim talking about relegation as a real possibility.
Yeah. It's bad when the manager himself utters that word.
Yeah, I read his comments in that BBC Sport article.
Oh, yeah.
They were pretty stark. It is a possibility, he said. We have to be clear with our fans.
Wow.
To hear the manager of Manchester United even acknowledging relegation as a possibility. It really shows how serious this situation is.
Yeah, you can almost hear the alarm bells ringing at Old Trafford.
You can.
And he didn't shy away from taking some responsibility either.
No, he didn't.
Saying things like, it is a bit embarrassing to be Manchester United coach and lose a lot of games.
Ouch.
Yeah.
I mean, that statement speaks volumes, don't it?
It really does.
You can just sense the weight of expectation on his shoulders, the sheer frustration of not being able to turn things around.
Yeah.
But then the question becomes, is this all on Amorim?
Right.
Or are there deeper issues at play here?
Is he being saddled with a team that's just not up to par? Are the players themselves just not performing?
Yeah.
Or is it a toxic combination of both?
It's hard to say.
I mean, where do we even begin to untangle this mess?
Well, I think we have to start by looking at Amorim's situation.
Okay.
He inherited a team that was already struggling.
Right.
And now he's got the weight of Manchester United's legacy on his shoulders.
Yeah.
Huge pressure to deliver results,
That's a lot.
but without the resources to make any sweeping changes.
Yeah, and from what I've read, it doesn't sound like he's got much wiggle room in the January transfer window either.
No, not really.
His comments about the club's finances weren't exactly encouraging.
No, he pretty much said his hands are tied unless they can offload some players first.
Right, and that leads to another problem. Who are they realistically going to sell at this point? And for how much?
That's the question.
You got players like Casemiro, a legend, no doubt, but his Premier League performance hasn't exactly been stellar.
Right.
And then there's Xerxes. Remember him?
Oh, yeah.
The big signing from Bayern Munich.
Who was supposed to be the answer to their striker problems.
And now the guy's practically being booed off the pitch by his own fans.
It's a tough situation all around.
So on the one hand, you've got Amorim trying to implement his vision with limited resources and a squad that's, well, let's just say underperforming.
To put it mildly.
Yeah, but then there's also the tactical debate swirling around him.
Right. Should he stick to his guns with that 3-4-3 formation?
Or does he need to adapt to the players he actually has available?
It's a tough call.
I mean, you've seen how much Amorim loves his 3-4-3, but is it working with these players?
I don't know. The 3-4-3 demands a very specific set of skills. You need fast attacking wingbacks, a rock-solid defensive midfielder to shield the back three, and a creative playmaker in the center of the park. Do they have those pieces in place? It's debatable.
Yeah, so maybe part of the problem is he's trying to fit square pegs into round holes,
Could be.
forcing a system that just doesn't suit the players.
It's possible.
Yeah.
And if we look back at that Newcastle game, there were some moments that really highlight this potential mismatch.
Oh, yeah, like what?
Like Isak's early header, for example.
Yeah.
He completely outmaneuvered Maguire and Martinez,
Yeah.
exposed the vulnerability of that high defensive line.
Which is so crucial to the 3-4-3.
Exactly. And then there was Joe Carton just overpowering Martinez in midfield.
Yeah.
That lack of physicality and defensive strength in the middle of the park, that's a real concern if you're playing with three at the back.
Okay, so maybe the tactics aren't helping, but can we
Right.
really let the players off the hook entirely?
No, I don't think so.
I mean, there's a level of individual accountability that seems to be missing here.
Absolutely. The players have to take ownership of their performances.
And from what we've seen,
That hasn't consistently been the case.
no. Remember those quotes from Gary Neville and Izzy Christensen?
Oh, yeah. They were not holding back. Oh. Calling out the lack of effort, the lack of passion, basically accusing the players of lacking the pride that should come with wearing a Manchester United shirt.
It was harsh. But
But you can't argue with their assessment.
no, you can't. There does seem to be this lack of fight, a sense of resignation, almost as if they've accepted their fate.
It's like they've given up.
And if that's the mentality within the squad, then no tactical tweaks or managerial masterstrokes are going to fix that.
You're right. It's a mentality issue, a cultural problem that runs deeper than any formation or transfer window fix.
Exactly. And this is where those comparisons to other fallen giants become really relevant.
You mean that disconnect between the team and the fans, that sense of entitlement?
Yes, but also that failure to adapt, to evolve with the changing landscape of modern football.
Okay.
The Premier League has become this globalized, hyper-competitive behemoth, and you can't just coast on past glories anymore.
Things have changed.
They have. You need a clear strategy both on and off the pitch. So are you saying Manchester United is a dinosaur?
Well, I wouldn't use such dramatic language,
Okay.
but there's definitely a sense that they've fallen behind in terms of strategic thinking and financial savvy.
Right?
They haven't kept pace with clubs like Manchester City or Liverpool, who've really embraced the modern game.
Yeah.
They've relied too heavily on their history, on their brand recognition, and now it's catching up to them.
I see what you're saying. It's like they've been banking on their name alone to carry them through, while other clubs have been building dynasties, investing in infrastructure, and really thinking long-term.
Exactly. And that short-sightedness has consequences.
So to answer my earlier question, is Manchester United's situation comparable to Leeds' downfall?
In some ways, yes.
Okay.
The inability to adapt, to evolve, to recognize that past glories don't guarantee future success.
Yeah.
That's a dangerous path for any club, regardless of its history or stature.
Okay, so if we're painting this picture of a club in crisis, a club teetering on the brink of disaster, what does that actually mean? What are the real-world consequences if Manchester United were to be relegated?
Well, apart from the on-pitch humiliation of playing in the championship, which would be significant for a club of their stature,
Right.
the real damage would be financial.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking about a catastrophic hit to their global brand, their ability to attract top talent, and, of course, their revenue streams.
The BBC Sport article went into a lot of detail about the potential financial fallout.
Yeah.
They mentioned that Manchester United stands to lose millions in sponsorship revenue from Adidas alone if they don't qualify for the Champions League.
Yeah.
And that's not even considering the impact of relegation, which would be exponentially worse.
It would be devastating. Relegation would trigger a financial earthquake at Old Trafford. We're talking about having to sell off key players, renegotiate contracts, potentially even facing a fire sale of assets.
Wow.
Selling off players, stadiums, training grounds, anything to make some quick cash.
It would be a scramble to stay afloat. Honestly, it's hard to even imagine Man U even being in this position.
I know.
We're talking about one of the biggest, most recognizable football clubs in the world.
And that's what makes this situation so captivating, isn't it? It forces us to confront the fragility of success, even for institutions that seem invincible.
Okay, so we've laid out the pretty dire reality of Manchester United's predicament. Their historic lows, their awful recent performances, the tactical problems, the looming financial abyss. It's a lot to take in.
It is.
But this is where the deep dive gets really interesting, because now the question becomes, is there a way out of this maze? Can Manchester United pull themselves back from the brink? Is there any hope left for this fallen giant?
Okay, so we've really gone through it all, haven't we? The darkness of Manchester United's current situation explored the cautionary tales of other clubs and even peered into that potential financial abyss.
Yeah, it's a
lot.
It's a lot to process.
But now let's try to be a little more optimistic. Is there a glimmer of hope somewhere? Can they actually pull themselves out of this nosedive? Well, let's see if we can try to map out a potential path to redemption for them. It won't be easy, that's for sure.
No.
But I do believe there are paths they could take.
Okay, so where do they even begin? What's the first step Amorim needs to take to stop this freefall?
It might sound overly simplistic, but honestly, the immediate priority has to be stopping the bleeding.
Okay.
They need to break this losing streak, regain some sense of confidence, and start picking up points.
Okay.
Even if it's just draws at first, anything to just halt this downward spiral.
I hear you, but their performance against Newcastle was just so bad. They
Yeah.
didn't even manage a single shot on goal for the first 30 minutes.
It was rough.
Where do you even begin to turn that around?
That's where Amorim's tactical decisions become really important.
Okay.
He needs to find a system that actually utilizes the strengths of the players he has available.
Okay.
And perhaps that means putting his personal preferences aside.
You mean like dishing the 3-4-3?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe he needs to ditch the 3-4-3 for now and go back to a more pragmatic approach.
Okay.
Something that focuses on defensive solidity and quick counterattacks.
Right.
You know, playing to the strengths of the players he has, rather than trying to force them into a system that might not be working.
You know what? You're right. He's been so insistent on sticking to that 3-4-3, but maybe now is the time to be a bit more flexible. Adapt or die, as they say.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And while we're talking about adaptation, we can't put all the blame on the manager.
Right.
The players themselves need to step up, take some responsibility for their performances, and rediscover that grit and determination that used to define Manchester United.
Yeah.
They need to play with the kind of pride that should be synonymous with wearing that iconic red shirt.
Like those quotes we mentioned from Gary Neville and Izzy Christensen.
Exactly.
Brutal, but you couldn't help but agree with them.
No, you couldn't. It's a mentality issue, a cultural problem that's seeped into the very fabric of the team.
And that's not something you can just fix overnight.
No, it requires a fundamental shift in attitude, a rediscovery of that winning mentality that used to be ingrained in every single player on that team.
I see what you're saying. It's like this collective feeling that needs a collective solution.
Right.
But let's be realistic. They're a bit hamstrung financially, right?
Yes.
It's not like they can just go on a massive spending spree in January and buy their way out of trouble.
No.
So what are the long-term solutions here? Can they really fix this without a major overhaul?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And maybe, just maybe, those financial constraints could be a blessing in disguise.
What do you mean?
Well, think about it. This could be the perfect opportunity to focus on developing young talent from within their academy.
Oh, interesting.
Manchester United has a long history of producing world-class players.
Yeah, like the class of '92.
Exactly. Players like Beckham, Giggs, and Scholes all rising from the youth ranks to become legends.
Right.
Perhaps this is a chance to rediscover that tradition.
To nurture the next generation of stars.
Exactly.
I mean, that would be an incredible story. A phoenix rising from the ashes, a new era built on homegrown talent. Are there any promising youngsters in the pipeline right now? Anyone who could be the face of this new Manchester United?
There are a few names being thrown around.
Oh, yeah?
Kabi Mainu, for example.
Okay, yeah, I've heard that.
He's a midfielder who's been doing really well at the youth level, and he actually came on as a substitute in that Newcastle game, remember?
I do, actually.
Maybe he's a sign of things to come.
Interesting. So developing youth is one potential avenue. What else do they need to do to turn things around?
On a broader level, I think they need to reassess their entire strategy.
Okay.
They need to get back to the core principles that made Manchester United so successful in the past.
Like what?
A commitment to attacking football, a strong scouting network that identifies and acquires the right players, and that all-important culture of winning.
Yeah.
They need to create an environment where winning isn't just a goal, it's an expectation.
I love that. A winning expectation.
Right?
But that's easier said than done, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
As we've seen this season, rebuilding that winning mentality is a huge task.
It is. It starts at the top with the owners, filters down through the manager and the coaching staff, and ultimately needs to reach every single player on the squad.
It's about instilling that belief.
Yes, that they can achieve anything, that they are Manchester United and that they are destined for greatness.
It's a powerful vision, but can they actually make it a reality? What do you think? Can Manchester United pull themselves back from the brink and reclaim their place among the elite?
I'm cautiously optimistic.
Okay.
I think they have the resources, the history, and most importantly, that incredibly passionate fan base to fuel a resurgence.
Yeah.
But it will take time. It will take bold decisions, and it will take a collective effort from everyone involved at the club.
So for our listeners who are following this saga, what should they be watching for in the coming months? What are the key indicators that things are moving in the right direction?
I'd say keep a close eye on Amorim's tactical decisions. Is he adapting his system? Is he giving young players a chance to shine? And most importantly, are the players responding? Are they showing that fight, that determination that's been missing? Those are the signs to look for.
Great points. And for me, I'll be watching to see if a leader emerges from within the squad, someone who can really galvanize the team, inspire them to fight for their survival, and maybe lay the foundation for a new era of Manchester United dominance.
This is just the beginning of what promises to be a long and uncertain journey for Manchester United.
Yeah.
It's a story of mistakes, of complacency, but also perhaps of redemption. We'll have to wait and see how this chapter unfolds.
Well said. And that concludes our deep dive into the world of Manchester United. We'll be back next time to tackle another fascinating topic. Until then, stay curious and keep exploring.